Greetings, amigops and top teners everywhere. This is Mike from Top 10 with Kyle and Mike. I am joined this week, as I am every week, by our two ring wearing, actually, bearded, bespectacled, but t-shirted, lovely co-host, Kyle. In a very special circumstance, I am also joined by friend of the pod, marketer of the pod, co-worker of the pod, Gina. Gina is here to be our expert guest. She's going to be talking about something. I have no idea what the hell that is. It's going to eventually turn into a top 10 list after we've debated said topic vigorously. Hopefully, this episode will be of a manageable length and of great enjoyment. So, Kyle and Gina, what the hell are we talking about this evening?
Okay, so for this week's topic, this is a topic that I've talked to Kyle at work about, and also stems from my old college roommate and I used to have this debate a lot, and it is post-2000 rock bands. And it came from the fact that we realized rock isn't quite the same genre as it used to be, and, classic rock is very different from all the bands that we have now, and we used to kind of discuss what bands are most like classic rock, which ones are the best now, and that's where the list came from.
I love this category because I can absolutely see this topic coming up with like any young person whose musical sensibilities are like sort of leaning towards classic rock. But I specifically know that this is a topic of interest for Kyle, and it already makes your friendship clear. Like if you're even thinking about this, it's obvious that you're on the same wavelength as my boy Kyle.
So for some context, Gina and I work together and have for the last couple of years, and it's been great. But Gina is also like probably one of the most knowledgeable people I know about music, like all kinds of music, but especially rock music. So that is one reason that we get along very well. This was a fun kind of way that, you're right, how this topic came about. It was just one of those things you end up talking about at work in between doing actual work. And I think the way it stemmed was like, we started at the top. It was like, what's the greatest 2000s rock band? Because we kind of were just discussing how like rock bands aren't necessarily as iconic as they used to be, and as like a big as part of a culture as they were in like the 60s, 70s, 80s. And so obviously like if you're going to talk about the best band, it begs the question, well, what are the other top 10 if you happen to run a podcast like this? So we discussed this a while back, and it's taken a long time to get you on here, so it's overdue, but I'm really, really excited about it, and it's given us both, I think, plenty of time to think about it, so this is going to be fun.
So I think I only have one clarifying question, because I think that the definition of a rock band piece is probably one that's fluid enough that I'll get the feel for it as we go. So my only real question here is 2000s. All albums, most albums, or they feel that like they're a post-2000 rock band? Like what are we going with here?
Right, so this was some criteria that I debated for a while, and what I ended up going with was the band can have started before 2000, but you can only evaluate their post-90s music.
That's actually not a bad idea, because that allows for evolution of a band to kind of stay with the culture.
Right, and I also wanted to clarify that I didn't include much like heavy metal kind of rock because I'm just not as knowledgeable on that, and I didn't really want to include it in this, so I just wanted to get that out of the way.
I
think that's fair.
I think heavy metal kind of occupies like a different place than rock does anyways, and I think that's fine.
I feel like we're sort of thinking like the spiritual descendants of classic rock.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. Wow, I love this. I am very excited to see which directions we go in.
Yeah, you want to kick us off with number 10 there, G?
Sure. Number 10, I have Cold War Kids. Now, they're not the most popular band, but they do have consistent hits, especially over the last couple years, and I think that they are a solid contender for this list.
For me, I only have been like aware of them the last like probably 3 or so years, but in that time, I've really liked pretty much everything I've heard from them. They feel like, to me, like they've arrived, I would say, like they're on the radio and all that, but they also kind of feel like an up and coming band. Like we probably have not seen quite the best of the Cold War kids yet.
All right.
Is that a sentiment you share?
Yes and no. I feel like I've known them for a while, but at the same time, I know that they weren't popular for a while. So I think that's why, they land lower on the list, is because they haven't had their full term yet. But I think I agree that they are kind of up and coming.
All right. I would like to ask a favor, and I hope we can work with this. I don't know this band, so here's what I'm going to ask. So this is actually good. I like this because I think this will be a good educational opportunity for me because my musical knowledge is weak. I like a lot of music, but don't do a great job looking into it. So I'm going to be looking at this as a good good opportunity for me to get an education for free. But here's what I'm going to ask. Can you give me like a good comparable sort of classic rock band that I can compare these bands to? Like if off the top of your head, like you got somebody who this kind of reminds you of?
Honestly, I don't. And I don't know if you think of anything, Kyle. They're pretty different from a typical classic rock band.
They're very, like, they definitely fit snugly into, like, alt rock. Like, I don't know if, like, there's a very, easy comparison to a classic rock band. I'm trying to think of a band that they would compare to favorably, like you'd have to compare them to a more modern band because their sound is very modern.
Okay. All right. Well, if it doesn't totally work, that's okay too.
But I think what you're getting at is we should try to, if there's a band that you don't know, if we could make comparisons to bands that you do know, like that would help. Cold War Kids have a very clean sound. Like, it's not like, all power chords. They've got clean vocals. You've probably heard a couple of their songs. They're popular. You might have just not have known that they were. What's their one big song?
They first was pretty big a couple years ago. They have Love is Mystical now. That's, I think, pretty big at the moment.
Yeah.
I have a screenshot on my phone for this purpose. So Tied Up is a big one that's been on lately. Just a couple of them. I feel like you know that a few of them if you heard them. Yeah. But this is why it's low on the list.
Yeah, I think.
No, but this is good because I'm your audience. I need you to teach me.
All right, fair enough.
That's a really solid start.
All right.
Okay.
I can go to number 9.
Yeah.
Number 9, I have the White Stripes.
Oh, booyah!
I do know the White Stripes, thankfully.
Yes, I was hoping so. The White Stripes. I mean, they've never been the most popular, but just their hits have been so good. I mean, you have Seven Nation Army and Fell in Love with a Girl and We're Gonna Be Friends. Those are just some of their top ones, and I just feel like those are really solid pieces.
So it's really funny that you bring this up because I was in the car yesterday for a very long time with another coworker of ours, Nick, and he, like, out of nowhere, he was like, you know what I'm in the mood for is White Stripes, and we listened to them for like 2 hours, which was great, but I was kind of shocked at the variety of their music, because you have Seven Nation Army, you have Icky Thump, Dirty Leaves on the Ground, whatever. Like, they rock hard, but then they've got We're Gonna Be Friends, which I think most people know from Napoleon Dynamite, which is amazing. And then I introduced him to it's Jack White and Alicia Keys' Another Way to Die, which I don't know if you've heard that. It's the theme for Quantum of Solace, the Bond movie. So I don't know if we can't include Jack White's solo work. There's a lot of it, but the White Stripes are great. Nick is a very talented drummer, and he was lamenting the drumming stylings. Apparently she's not actually like a great drummer, and it's kind of a running joke. But I did not know that.
I did not either.
And it does not detract from my enjoyment of the Stripes.
There you go.
The thing I like about the White Stripes as an addition to this list is that, as you mentioned, a lot of their big songs are like not heavy metal, but like heavier kind of rock type songs. But they have a collection that includes a lot more sort of acoustic based music that's a little bit softer. And that to me is the mark of a classic rock band. They like all those old bands that you think of as like rocking really hard. That was a couple songs on their album, but then there would be the acoustic sort of ballads that they would play as well. And I like that a lot as a sort of way of structuring your albums. And I think that this is a band that fits nicely with that convention.
Mm-hmm. Cool. Moving on.
Sure.
We got number 8, which is Arctic Monkeys.
Oh, baby.
Well, This list, I can't say this list is trash because it's already clear that it's being given to us by somebody who knows much more than I. But you're gonna have to you got some splaining to do. How are the Arctic Monkeys this low?
I mean, you'll have to see who's higher than them.
I suppose, but they're like our generation's The Clash. They're incredible.
They are incredible, and I agree with that. I think that they've had some really solid music that's gone out. I also feel like there's a lot of people that are more popular and better, for lack of a better term.
Yes, for lack of a better term, there is wrong because there are better terms. But at any rate, what give us a couple like representative. Gina likes the Arctic Monkeys songs, so I want to get a feel for what you like about them.
I really like For Us and Adolescent. I think that's my favorite Arctic Monkey song. It's a
classic. Kyle and I have sung that in unison with all of our friends in the car ride home after a concert.
Many a time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, there are other hits. You have Why'd You Only Call Me When You're High, which is a classic, and I can rock out to that whenever. But
that is
I really like. I'm not saying at all that I don't like them. This
wasn't a test.
Why don't you like
I just wanted to get a sense of what you like about them, because they are a band that I think has a lot of different sort of eras to their music, and so there's a lot of different sounds they've had.
Yeah, no, definitely, and I agree with that, and I also think that they're just unique in their sound and whatnot, and that's what I think makes them so good.
Yeah, you just stumbled onto Mike. Is it Bruce Springsteen number one, and then the Arctic Monkeys? Like they're your favorite, like probably your favorite band, right? So,
all right, so you'll be fighting for this one later.
I will, but I'll be fighting from a position of like total homerism and no real knowledge, which is my preferred position to argue things from.
Mm-hmm. All right.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know. I will say, so I don't know if you had a chance to listen to it. So Mike and I saw the Arctic Monkeys, was it last year at TD Garden? Yeah. And they were great. They were touring my least favorite of their albums, but I think one of the big takeaways from the concert was that there were we were the oldest people there, which was really weird.
Yeah.
And surprising, right? We agreed that was not what we were anticipating.
No.
Right. So it really shocked me, and I think it is a testament to how popular their music is. I really expected it to be an older crowd, and didn't know how modern relevant they are today, but it would seem that they're extremely relevant.
How big was the concert venue?
I mean, it was at full NBA-sized arena.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so 16, 17,000.
Yeah, but
so they probably seat, I don't know, 12.
Plus the ground, on
12 to 15 probably.
So I guess my question is, since they've been around for a while, Mike, do you know if their entire discography would fit in the 2000s?
Yeah, so I think Whatever People Say I Am was 06 maybe?
Okay.
So they're actually later than you think, most of their collection. They've done a lot of work in a short period of time.
Okay.
Yeah, I believe I don't think they started before 2000.
Yeah. They're good.
All right, well, I'm sure we'll be talking more about them later.
Yes.
Gina, as a frequent listener of the podcast, I think you know what happens after number 8.
It's the not top 3?
Yes, it is.
Okay.
And could you help us make the not top 3 happen?
Yes.
You just have to cue the music first. That's the only thing.
Oh, cue the music.
Terrific work. One of our best guest cues of all time. Thank you, Gina. You are a natural.
Thank you, Gina, and thank you, Kevin. That beat was so stanky, I can't even stand it.
It was dripping in stank.
Okay, so for the not top 3, I wasn't sure at first what to do with this, because it's do I talk about the worst rock bands? That doesn't seem logical. So what I ended up going with was popular / good bands that think that they're rock, or people think that they're rock and they're not.
Oh, poster bands.
What a terrific not top 3 concept. That is the great fun of the not top 3 is what your concept is. And you've really knocked it out of the park.
All right. So Imagine Dragons is one of them.
Yeah.
And I have to laugh because I keep seeing these memes around that are like, literally any 4 white guys could come up to me and I would believe that they're Imagine Dragons, which I think is hilarious.
That is utterly true. Imagine Dragons, I think, so Kyle and I think have quoted this before, from The Office. Robert California refers to the Black Eyed Peas as rock for people who don't like rock, hip hop for people who don't like hip hop, and pop for people who don't like pop. And I think Imagine Dragons kind of fits into that mold too. Like, they're pop for people who don't like pop and rock for people who don't like rock.
Right. No, I 100% agree. I saw them at Summerfest in Milwaukee one year. I was there and it was right after the song Radioactive came out. Yep. And that's all anyone knew. And so people just swarmed the stage and talked throughout their whole concert and just sang along that song. And I don't know if that made me hate them even more, but...
And true or false, they had a huge drum, right? Didn't they have like a huge drum on stage for Radioactive during that tour?
I was so far away from the stage, I couldn't even tell you that.
I think I remember hearing that they just had like a gigantic drum that they hit for that.
Yeah, it wouldn't surprise me. And like, I'm not saying they're catchy, you know what I mean? Like, they're catchy, but I don't consider them as like a true rock band.
Yeah.
The other one's Coldplay, which might be a hot topic, and I love Coldplay, but I don't know if I would consider them a rock band. Maybe their earlier stuff, but I don't know about the recent stuff. I mean, they did just have a collaboration with the Chainsmokers, and that bothered me, so.
Oh, that was not like it was our wedding song or anything.
Was it actually?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, here I am.
So I'm a card-carrying Coldplay lover. I think most people that know me know this well. But I'm not so engrossed in their music that I can't understand that they're not, at least not anymore, a purely rock band.
And I love Coldplay, so I'm saying this like I love them. I'd say they're one of my favorite bands, but I don't think that they are up there with these other ones.
Not anymore, and especially because I think Parachutes might have been 2000, so I think technically their whole body of work fits into this. But like, if we're considering the entirety of their work, it's definitely more pop than it is rock. And even at the beginning, it was really soft rock.
Yes.
So
yes.
Yeah.
I want to talk briefly about Genesis. Do you think Genesis is a rock band?
I don't have an opinion on that. I'm not super familiar.
See, it's different because if you put Coldplay in the 80s, like they would be a rock band.
So that's kind of what I'm getting at. Like Genesis, I think Coldplay wanted to be U2, but decided they were Genesis. And I think Genesis is a rock band.
Genesis is, but I think context matters. And like a pre-grunge, like, I think grunge kind of like demarcated. Like, if you have to be like at least as hard as like a grunge band sometimes to be considered rock now. And like Coldplay is not that.
So sort of a vocabulary issue.
A little bit.
I think that a lot of the bands that I have on this list, they might have some softer songs, but they definitely have some rock out songs, and it's hard to establish that with Coldplay.
It's hard to like really boost a resume that doesn't include much like electric guitar. Like the vast majority of their career, they've made their sounds with acoustic guitar and like really heavy synth and keyboard stuff and a lot of percussion, which like is cool. You know, another band like that is Keen. Mm-hmm. Like, they don't have a guitarist. It's a vocalist and a keyboardist and a drummer. Mm-hmm. And like, I think Keen kind of falls in the same bucket of like, close, but not quite a rock band. Like, if you don't have, it's kind of hard without an electric guitar, I feel like.
Right. That's fair. All right. Okay. And my last, not top 3, is Maroon 5.
Oh, Jesus.
Because I know, like, most people wouldn't consider them rock, but I have heard them described as that, and I just don't agree.
They're just shit.
Well, hey, I don't know about that. I really
Yes, you do. Yes, you do. Maroon 5 is terrible. You didn't have a wedding song to Maroon 5.
We're gonna
so
shit
don't
on
give
Kyle
us...
today, and I just made fun of his wedding song, and now you can make fun of him for the rest of it.
I don't hold up Maroon 5 as like a standard upon which you should try to make music. But every fucking time that a Maroon 5 song comes on, I'm like, fuck yeah. And
Sunday morning rain is falling.
not even that. Like, anything that is on the radio now.
Does it make you want to get a California tattoo on your stomach?
No. But it does make me want to sing and, like, dance around a little bit. Like, it's just like, it's everything that's, if you don't like really popular, catchy, poppy music, you're not gonna like Maroon 5.
Right.
But there's value in that, and I find it.
No, and that's what I'm saying, is they are a pop band, they're not a rock band. I mean, you have songs like Harder to Breathe, which is one of their older ones, which maybe can classify as rock, but other than that, especially everything as of lately, they're not.
Not even close to a rock band, but I agree that...
Sugar!
Yeah.
Oh, so sweet!
Come on, that's just fun. It's not pop. It's particularly crappy pop, but it's still fun to listen to. So I'll defend it from that angle. Through the lens of this podcast, the Not Top 3 is a perfect place for them.
All right.
Yeah.
All right.
Beautifully constructed not top 3.
Thank you.
Yeah, very well done, Gina.
Do I go into number 7 now?
I think now would be the time.
All right. So
Let her
number
rip.
7, I have Blink 182.
Oh, man.
Now this one's tough because, you know, overall very popular, very loved band, but you have a lot in the 90s because you have All the Small Things and What's My Age Again both land in the 90s, and I think those
Which is Enema of the State, right?
I believe so, yes.
Yeah.
Okay, so that was like but that's probably their biggest album, right?
Right, but then after you do have some contenders, you have Anthem Part 2, Feeling This, I Miss You, which is something that Kyle imitated on another one of the pods, which I was laughing so hard at. So you still have some solid music after the 90s, but they kind of land a little bit lower because of those two being in the 90s.
Yeah, they're a weird crossover band because they represent sort of the best version of what rock could be in the early 2000s, but it was already sort of ending for them. They're interesting. I'm interested to see them on this list and this high. I don't have a dispute because they're like a generational band. They're just, they're sort of an odd fit for really any list. Like, they're not grunge, so they don't fit with like a discussion of like Nirvana, but they also aren't like early 2000s alt rock, like theoretically a Coldplay or like I don't know, what, the stupid Sex on Fire, Kings of Leon. Like they're not really like either of those things. So they're interesting, but I think they definitely deserve to be on the list.
If the entirety of their work was in the 2000s, they'd be very high, I think.
Yeah.
Like, definitely top half of the list, but
even then they'd fit awkwardly, like generically.
Yeah.
Like their genre is just different than kind of like most anybody really. Like, cause most of the bands in their genre suck.
Yeah, well, I mean, go back to Dylan's podcast. Like, we were grouping them in the same breath with, like, Simple Plan. And
yeah, right. And Simple Plan's terrible.
Right. I mean, they're a much better band than Simple Plan, but they're, like, kind of straddle the line between, like, like really whiny emo punk.
Yeah, I was gonna say angsty.
Yeah, really angsty.
Really
like
angsty.
a Fallout Boy. Like, there's not a lot of good bands doing what they did, which is part of what makes them hard, because most of the other bands doing what they did kind of stink.
Right. But I think they've got enough to at least warrant consideration. They had an album, like, 2 years ago, right? Mm-hmm. That, like, I didn't listen to it, but there were a couple of singles off it that I liked.
Mm-hmm. Right.
So they're relevant. Like, they still exist. I think they tour.
Yeah.
Yeah, they do. Cool.
Yeah. I love them. I love them at 7. I think that's a great spot for them.
All right. Number 6, I have Muse.
Oh my god, I forgot about Muse. Holy fuck.
So I personally really like Muse, but bias aside, I think that they are a really strong band. They might not be the most popular, but they're I think people would be surprised to know how much Muse songs they know. They've had a lot of hits. They've been in a lot of soundtracks, I think. So
most famously Starlight was featured in the instant romantic comedy classic Crazy Stupid Love.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, yeah.
I think they had was it them that had one or two hits on Twilight? The Twilight series, actually, which,
oh my God,
as bad of movies those were, they had really good soundtracks, actually.
I'm looking at them on Wikipedia right now, and from 98 to 2000 were their first EPs, and then basically everything that we know from them is 2000 plus. So we can consider the majority of their career in this, and if that's the case, even though I literally just said I forgot about them, I've listened to a ton of Muse. Mm-hmm. They're awesome, and they've got a very distinct sound. It's definitely not for everyone. Mm-hmm. I feel like it's kind of binary, you're really into Muse or you're really not. Is that fair to say?
I think so, yeah.
I mean,
not a lot of lukewarm Muse people out there.
Yeah.
Right.
And it's also weird. It's I think intentionally kind of alien sounding and really weird, and a lot of their actual subject material is science fiction-y and futuristic, and it's kind of really weird. I remember we had a calculus teacher in high school who, you wouldn't understand any of this stuff, Mike.
Absolutely not.
And he was saying Muse, there's a whole subsection of metal music primarily called mathcore, where they're obsessed. This is a real thing, where they're obsessed with the geometric and the math behind what makes scales work. And Muse is not a mathcore band, but they're a very mild form of it, where those guys are into kind of understanding the science of music, which sounds really stupid and weird, but it's, I think, at least worth noting.
Right.
It's rock and roll, baby.
Exactly.
So, Kyle, you have not seen Muse live?
No, I've not.
Muse
Gina,
played,
have you?
No, Muse played a couple years ago at Lollapalooza, 2 years ago. And it was rained out, but only after one or two songs. And for a music festival like that, no one is refunded or anything like that. And the following day, I saw The Killers, and he actually covered one of the Muse songs and did a great job, and everyone was really appreciative of it. He was I just want to do this since they were canceled, and everyone was just cheering him on, and I feel like there was all these people there that meant to see Muse the night before. It was just really cool.
That is pretty cool.
That is really cool. Brandon Flowers is a cool dude.
He is.
Yeah, I've heard Muse gives a crazy, amazing live show. And I think that's a big element of a rock band that is maybe gone by the wayside a little bit. So I like to hear them at this place in the list.
Mm-hmm.
If people are still wondering who Muse is, I feel like a lot of people have heard of them because Knights of Sidonia is in one of the Guitar Hero games.
Oh, yeah, I heard about that.
Honestly, that's where I heard a lot of, when I was young and forming my music tastes, Guitar Hero is a pretty big influence on that. So that might be where some people have heard of Muse before.
Definitely. Number 5 is Arcade Fire.
Ooh.
And
you do love Arcade Fire.
I really do, and I personally like them, but I was looking at it, they won a Grammy for Best Album of the Year, which I think is a huge statement.
Is that The Suburbs?
Mm-hmm.
Ugh, what an album.
And, but also than that, they're so unique, and that's why I wanted to put them up so high. I mean, I was actually listening to a podcast about them, and they were talking about how they don't even have choruses in a lot of their songs, and that's so different, and you don't even notice. I mean, their first album, Funeral, the first couple songs don't have choruses, and those are some of the best songs that they have put out, and they have a church organ in a couple of their songs. And while I think they might be losing their touch a little bit because they're getting a little poppy and, I don't know, EDM style, they have such a strong beginning, and their first 2 or 3 albums were just amazing. So this might be high because of my personal bias, but I think they should be up there.
Do you listen to Arcade Fire, Mike?
A little bit. I'm more aware of Arcade Fire than an Arcade Fire guy, but I feel like I listened to more Arcade Fire music 6 years ago or than now. Does that sound right?
Yes, I'd say so. I mean, like I said, I think some of their better stuff is their first stuff, and that's kind of when they were really big. So
I listened to those albums pretty heavily, especially The Suburbs, and I haven't really listened to much of them since, unless it's off those two albums. But
I've seen them live twice, and I think that also might have something to do with my opinion on them because I think they're just incredible.
I've heard people make fun of their live performances though, because don't they have like a truly hilarious number of people on stage at any given time?
Yes, there's like 15 people on stage. Their most recent tour, they were performing on a boxing ring, and they just rotate positions, so they were facing different parts of the concert, and
that's cool.
But there were so many of them, so I guess you kind of needed something like that when there's that many of you on stage.
That's a great idea.
That kind of reminds me of, I don't think they qualify for this list because they are not quite rock. They're more like folk, like indie folk. Like, we saw the Lumineers opened for U2, and there were it felt like there were 15 people on stage, and there were just people running around in the background with tambourines, that might not have even been in the band. They're
probably just groupies.
It felt like they were like, "Hey man, I'm hitching to Chicago," and they were like, "Oh, cool. Do you want to hold this tambourine and come up with us on stage, man?" And that's what I don't know if that's how the Lumineers behave, but it seems like
or talk.
Yeah.
Or talk. No, I really like the Lumineers, but yeah, there's a lot of them, and I wouldn't say that they're on the list, but I
only bring them up because of that. We're not considering a band like that on, for this list, right?
No.
Okay. Cool.
That folky, you mean?
Yeah, kind of folky, kind of almost not quite country-ish, but indie.
Simon folk. And Garfunkel-y.
Yeah.
Right, no. I don't have any on there like that.
Okay. Mm-hmm. So shut up, Quinn. No Mumford.
Number 4 is Green Day.
Oh, man.
Now, this is opposite of personal bias because I actually don't like Green Day. But obviously they deserve a closer to the top spot on the list.
I think we need to... Hold on. I'm going to Google Green Day because I'm curious to see how much of their stuff comes in.
So, in the 90s,
when does
they
Dookie come out?
Dookie came out in 1994.
Wow.
Okay.
They have When I Come Around in Basket Case on that one. And then Good Riddance, which is probably my favorite by them, came out in 97. But in the 2000s, you have American Idiot, you have Holiday, Boulevard of Broken Dreams, Wake Me Up When September Ends. So really, yeah, they had some good ones in the 90s, but they've had a lot of solid ones after.
That's wild. Even if you take out their best music, which is pretty much all happened in the 90s, they still have enough, mega hits, to keep them in this conversation. Holiday and Boulevard of Broken Dreams and American Idiot, those three, and then When September Ends, those 4 songs, I feel got so much play when we were you're a few years younger than we are, but middle school and high school, those songs were always on and everybody knew them. But, even at that time, people were we were really into Green Day and then we're really tired of Green Day really fast.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's such they were so symbolic of that era of music that Dwight singing Boulevard of Broken Dreams on karaoke during the Christmas episode of The Office, didn't need explanation as to why it was funny. It was funny because it was Green Day. That's the whole joke.
Right.
And that, I think, is a good representation of how big Green Day was. I agree with you, Kyle. It's funny to think that you can take away their best music and they still stand as one of the biggest sort of crossover rock bands of the early 2000s, because they, like Blink-182, sort of straddle a couple subgenres, but I think they're a little more comfortably in the camp of a traditional rock band. And I think one of the most popular of the early 2000s, and while they're a little annoying from time to time, I would say deservedly so.
Yeah, they were one of the few bands that was able to transition from a pretty well-respected punk band into a really successfully commercial band, and not entirely ruin it. They were popular and people made fun of them, but they still liked it.
Right, and, it's not Nickelback.
And they... Yeah.
Oh, wow. What? You already spoiled number 1. Jeez.
Yeah. How did Nickelback not make the top 3? Because you know who thinks they rock out with their cocks out is Nickelback.
Yeah.
Fair
You know,
enough.
they have a song called Porn Star Dancing. Don't forget.
They also have another song called Rockstar.
Yeah.
All about
We all
being
just
rock
want to be a
stars.
big rock star. I gotta tell you, in my guilty pleasure list of all time, I kinda like Rockstar.
One of our coworkers did it at karaoke and like fully imitated it. It had like a clenched fist the entire time that he was
Wow.
on stage. And someone came up to me because I was in the audience and they were like, "Is this satire?"
Halfway, we think.
Little
You
bit.
still- we all know the words right now. If I
Yeah.
played Rockstar right
I
now,
just wanna be.
Right,
Yeah.
right.
we used to do,
Hotel rooms.
me and Bone and Dylan, both former guests of the pod, used to do trivia a lot, and they would have these lightning rounds at the end, and one of them was they just played the Rockstar music video, and you had to write down as many celebrity cameos as you could,
Oh, wow.
and there were like 50.
Really?
It was really fun, and we enjoyed it more than we probably ought to have.
I'm
But-
gonna go home and watch that.
Anyways, now we've been spending kind of a long time talking about Nickelback, and we should be talking about our honorable
That's
mentions.
fair. That's fair. Oh, okay. Honorable mentions. I have a long list.
Excellent.
Let her rip.
Some of them I'll just list and some of them I'll explain. So, my list is Franz Ferdinand,
Take me out.
Panic at the Disco. Oh, do you have...
Panic!
Panic!
Okay Go, which,
Yeah, never
you
forget.
know, don't
Here
forget
we
that.
go,
They have the
here
fun
we
music
go.
videos and whatnot.
Yeah.
The Here We Go Again, or Here It Goes Again music video was, like, that was one of the reasons YouTube became what it became. That's
Yes.
like a hugely important video.
True.
Agreed.
Linkin Park.
Ooh.
Weird genre. I don't know about them.
Yeah.
them
They're more of a
being on this.
hybrid.
I don't
Yeah,
even
it's a
like know about
hybrid.
them being on this list. Did you just make a hybrid theory pun?
What?
Huh? What? No?
Huh?
Yeah, I did.
You did? Oh.
Gross.
TV on the Radio. Not super popular, but I would say they're a very good band.
Huh.
The National. A little bit more depressing than your average rock band, but very good.
Yeah, didn't they do Reigns of Castamere?
They absolutely did Reigns of Castamere. I listened to that on the way to work this morning. Legitimately. That's a true story.
Wow, how about that?
Yep.
Yeahs.
The yes.
Oh, I haven't heard them in a while.
Little bit more, you know, on the down low, but still
Yeah.
got some good songs out there.
Yep.
Yellow Card.
Oh,
Oh,
there's a place called Ocean Avenue.
yeah, I've heard of that one.
Beck, which I don't know if it's super rock, but that's why he's on honorable mentions, because like popular, been around for a while, but nah.
I fucking love Beck.
Yeah, I mean, he's great. They're great. I don't know if it's a he or they, actually.
I think it's like one of those things where it's like definitely he, but it's styled as a band. I
Right.
don't know. He's like he's won like Emmys. Like he's like,
Yeah.
I think widely considered to be like a really talented musician. Like the lyricism is fucking insane. It doesn't make any sense, but I think that's part of what makes it so appealing.
He's also he's got so much variety.
That and like if you've ever like every single song, it's like a real pain in the ass to try to learn his stuff on the guitar because everything he does is in like tunings that he made up. Like he doesn't do anything in standard or drop T tuning, which like probably like 95% of the music you hear is in standard or drop D tuning, and his stuff is like drop B sub F. Like it's all. You can only play one song of his at a time because then you have to spend 5 minutes retuning your guitar to play the next one.
Weird.
Which, like, he must just have like 1,000 guitars that are tuned the way he likes them. But, like, the way he experiments with music in that way is really impressive. I don't know. I don't know if if he's just not popular enough or if he doesn't, like, quite qualify. On my personal list, Beck's really high.
Yeah. Okay.
But
Dashboard Confessional. There's a couple of these like angsty bands on here because I love that growing up.
You know how I feel having them on the honorable mention list, Kyle?
vindicated.
I feel vindicated. I'm also selfish and wrong, but I'm right. Swear I'm right.
I was waiting for that last one.
Swear I knew it all along. Oh.
Vampire Weekend.
You know, have you listened to their new album?
Yeah,
It's a real delight to listen to.
it's good.
They, like, kind of occupy a not quite rocky space for me, like, especially with this newest album. But
I think they're great, but I don't think they're quite as rock as the others, so that's why they're out there.
I think this is the right spot for them.
Young the Giant, my personal favorite, but not good, popular enough to be on the list.
Worth listening to, though,
yes.
if you do not.
Modest Mouse.
Mm-hmm.
Spoon. Silver Sun Pickups, which maybe kind of goes into a little bit of, like, heavier stuff, but still good. Band of Horses. Not a super popular band. The Decemberists.
Yep.
Wolf Parade. These are a lot. So
I don't know that one. That's awesome. Wolf Parade.
Jimmy Eat World.
Oh, that is
Oh, man.
U2, kinda.
The problem is that they've been active for all of the 2000s. It's just very little of it has been any good.
You know what my favorite album from U2 from the 2000s is? That one on your phone.
What?
Do you remember that when they gave like every iPhone just like all of a sudden had a U2 album on it?
Songs of Innocence. I know because it was the first album to queue up on my Bluetooth for several years.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thanks, U2.
Yeah. Thank you. You're great.
Mute Math.
Yep.
Fall Out Boy.
Yeah.
Sum 41. Kings of Leon, as you mentioned earlier.
Yep.
21 Pilots.
Huh.
Very good. Considering putting them on the list, I've heard they're amazing live. I have never seen them.
I've heard that as well.
And then my last honorable, well, I'm sure there's more, but the one I wanted to mention was Greta Van Fleet, because although I think they're absolutely amazing and they're really up and coming, they're just too new to put on the list. But I think if we did this in 10 years, they'd be on there.
I could see their career either being like that, like you said, in 10 years we'll still be talking about them, or I could see them kind of like devolving into just having their one thing that they do and not evolving, which I think is a danger. But we talked about Greta Van Fleet on our best albums of 2018, and the Anthem of the Peaceful Army is, if you go through my personal 2018 songs I played a lot of them are off that album. They are fantastic, and probably the closest band on this list to like what we were talking about with like a classic rock sound.
Right. That's what a lot of people say. I actually recently got a record player, probably because I moved to Wicker Park, so I had to become a little bit
required.
And I was in a record store and was that classic like worker who knows everything and wants to tell you everything. And I was buying Greta Van Fleet album, and he wanted to talk about it, and he was just so excited, I think, to hear some of that old sound again, you know, because it's not super common anymore.
Great album. Great pick. I think you're right, though, that we need to see a little more from you, Greta Van Fleet.
Yes. Work on that.
Yeah. Wow. That is an impressive honorable mention list, Gina.
Do you guys have any to add? Or do we have to go through the other three first?
Let's do your top three, and then we can talk through anything we think you might have missed.
That's fair.
I don't know how many of those there can be.
All right. So, going into number 3, the Red Hot Chili Peppers.
Oh, boy.
I'm not confident on their place in this list, in terms of how high they are.
This feels like a pick, like you're not a really big fan of them, but you feel like there's enough
No, like I am, but it's not as much, I guess you could say. And they're just classic. So I feel like they have to be higher, but I just don't. I could skip one of their songs. You know what I'm saying? Like there's bands on here that I would probably not skip their songs, but I would potentially skip.
Yeah. So on Wikipedia.
Yeah, they were formed. They've been around since like the 80s.
Yeah. 2002 though, a lot of people know, by the way.
Yeah.
And then 2000 and they released in 2003 they released a greatest hits album. 2006 was Stadium Arcadium. I think a lot of people listened to that one. That's got Snow and Danny California and that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
When's Californication?
I think that's 90s.
Yes, it's 99.
Yeah. So they've had a lot of success in the 2000s. They came out with an album not all that long ago, and it looks like producing a 12th studio album. So I don't know. I think I think their stock has taken a hit from those who watch The Good Place.
Yeah.
Have you ever?
They really love me.
Have you ever paid money to see California funk band, the Red Hot Chili Peppers? Do you watch The Good Place?
No, I don't.
Oh, they drag them right through the coals.
Mike Shore, the creator of Parks and Rec and The Good Place, just seems to have a grudge against Red Hot Chili Peppers and makes a lot of jokes at their expense. It's very amusing.
So there's a knockoff band called the Red Hot Chili Pipers.
Yeah.
And I know this because they used to come to Summerfest every year.
Do they just play pipes?
I actually never saw them. I worked at Summerfest, which is why
It's like a pan flute of snow.
But I never ended up seeing them. I worked for like 8 summers at Summerfest, but we had a brochure of all of the bands, and everyone would get confused because they're like, the Red Hot Chili Peppers are coming, and we'd have to correct them.
No, it's the Chili Pipers. Pied Pipers.
The Pipers. So
Pie Piper.
But all in all, I'd be comfortable with moving this one down later. Just gonna say that. I just feel like Danny California, songs like that, you know, they deserve a place kind of like Green Day.
I think they might move down a little bit, but I do think that they probably are one of the most like traditional rock bands on this list, and particularly if you wind the clocks back to like 2007. They're one of the biggest bands on the planet, and they're specifically would be known as like a real rock band. Like that was a time when the question of real rock was big. I think music has changed so much over the past, call it 5 years, that that's just not really a question people are asking in the same way. But I think at that time, there was still enough like living memory of regular old rock that they were sort of a band that like, you know, carried that torch for people.
Yeah, I think they belong in the top half of the list. If they stay at 3 or not, I don't know. But there's enough stuff that they've done, and like everyone has heard of them. Everyone knows who they are, and it's kind of hard to listen to one of their songs and not know that it's them. They've crafted a unique sound.
Fair enough.
California and drug use in Southern California.
Right. That too.
There you go.
The subject matter is very specific.
All right. Number 2, we have The Killers.
Booyah.
I was getting concerned you were leaving them off
Oh,
this
no.
list.
I would never.
What's wild, though, is that there are 2 bands I can think of that I would argue could be number 1, and we only have 1 spot left.
Well, there's one band I know you think has to be number 1, and if they're not, then this whole list is a disaster.
Well, we'll see.
Because like I know who you.
Page.
Okay.
I'm confident I know what number 1 is, as we've attended their concert together. But well, whatever. We'll get there.
Okay.
Let's talk about the Killers.
The Killers. I mean, what can you not say about the Killers? They're just incredible. I personally love them. I think a lot of people love them. I think that they kind of lost touch over the years, but overall, they've got a solid discography. I mean, there was some statistic that like Mr. Brightside has been on the top 100 list of like every Billboard charts in the last however many years.
Is Mr. Brightside one of the 10, if not best, like from a purely musical perspective, is it one of like the greatest songs of all time, if not the best?
Right.
It's the Don't Stop Believin' of our generation.
Definitely. 100%.
It's like every person under the age of 30 knows all the words to it and gets excited to hear it, right? Probably even a little older than that. Like, so to have that on your resume alone puts you up there. Hot Fuss is like one of the greatest debut albums ever.
Yes.
Yeah.
Sam's Town is not a disappointment after that, which is saying something.
Right.
Yep.
And what's so cool, because I brought this up to someone and they had said like, oh, really? It's just like 1 or 2 songs that they have. But I said, no.
Oh my God.
You have, when you were young, you have all these things that I've done. I mean, you even have recent ones, like The Man was on the radio.
Yep.
And I don't think you can just limit them to Mr. Brightside at all.
Well, and people overlook Day and Age.
Yep.
But you got Human and Spaceman off that album, which at the time was like kind of a departure. And it was really,
ding, ding.
Yeah, and it was really strange. And in retrospect, it's like, it's hard to believe that at the time we were like worried about the Killers.
Yep. This is exactly the right point to be making, which is that the people who think the Killers have lost it are the people who understandably just kind of gave up on them. Mm-hmm. But the people who stuck with them, they're now stopping and looking back and saying, oh wow, I love what they did with that. I'm glad that they experimented, and I'm really kind of cool with the place that they are now. Like,
right.
I think that this, just because this is the language I speak, the thing about Bruce Springsteen is a good example. Like, people who got off the train after Born to Run because Nebraska and Darkness on the Edge of Town came out, I don't criticize them. I get it. Like, you fell in love with a particular sound and it changed. But if you think that that's where the train stopped, it's just because you got off. Like, the train kept going in really cool and different ways. It just, you might have been alienated by a change. But looking back as a fan who has stuck with it through all that, wow, what a rewarding kind of journey.
Right, and I feel the same way about this. And, I mean, even on their last album, you have, I don't know how familiar you guys are with it, but the song, The Rut, I love that song. And it's
an incredible
it's
song.
It's got this, like, kind of 80s synth vibe. Like, they've got a lot going on.
Well, you made the comparison to Genesis earlier. I think, like, it actually tracks with the Killers, too.
Yeah.
And like people don't even talk about Battleborn, like that album sandwiched between those two. And that's a great, great album. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And so I listened to their greatest hits the other day all the way through, and it's not a weak greatest hits where you've got 4 songs and then filler. Like, it's maybe not songs that are household names, but every single one of them is incredible. I think you might find people that would quibble with you that if we're like, I wouldn't make this argument, but I think based on how like synth heavy they are, that people might not consider them a conventional rock band. I don't think that's a valid argument, but they are a little different with their sound than some of the other bands on this list.
Yeah.
But. Right. And I think that they even do covers well. I mean, like I said, I saw them live and Brandon Flowers crushed the Muse cover. I mean, I don't think many people could cover Muse, but he did it, and he did it well.
Yeah.
They have Romeo and Juliet, which they cover by Dire Straits, which it's such an unknown song, but I really like their version of it.
Wow, I can totally see them like being Dire Straits. That's part of what I want you to continue this tangent because it's so interesting. But like, I think this is a cool thing about them doing covers is I can picture them as a bunch of different bands.
Yeah, and I think that they can adapt, and that doesn't mean they don't have their own sound too. But I've always loved that song that they cover by Dire Straits, and even though it's very not well known, I listen to it all the time.
I saw them cover the Cars. I know just what I needed, whatever that song is.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think that's what it's called.
Yeah, it was incredible, like so good.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Mm. Well, we're all in agreement. This makes it easy.
Yeah. All right, and then number 1 is Foo Fighters.
Obviously,
which my life was changed when I saw them in concert. I was there with some college friends. Kyle was there with his brother, so we stood together, and it was just, my mind was blown.
It was a transcendent experience.
It was insane.
So prior to that, the best show I ever saw was Coldplay, and that was amazing. It was a really like almost religious experience for me. But the Foo Fighters was just a different kind of experience. The Foo Fighters, like, so clearly, and mostly Dave and Taylor, but they worship rock and roll. Like, and you can see it when they perform. And Cameron kept saying it, like, he was like very drunk, not like actually drunk, but like drunk on them. And he just kept screaming like, these guys are legends. Like, they are rock gods. And like, they really are. Like, they just love the music so fucking much. And like, Dave is he's like a kid. He was just like getting, telling people on this side or the other to sing along and like telling stories. They played like for almost like 3.5, 4 hours.
It was such a long concert.
If you want to talk about covers, like, it was wild. They covered Cheap Trick. Mm-hmm. They had the guy for, I think one of the guys from Cheap Trick was there. They played, it was like the chords and the progression of Imagine by John Lennon, but they sang the words to Jump by Van Halen. It was really, really weird. They did a bunch of silly stuff where they would play some of their deeper tracks and Taylor would sing and Dave was on drums like he was in Nirvana. And this is all just like their live performance. If you want to get into their music, like these guys have like been the face of rock and roll for like the entirety of the 2000s.
The issue with that is you have, in the 90s, Everlong, Monkey Wrench, Learn to Fly, My Heroes. You can't evaluate those. However, you have times like these. You have All My Life. You have Best of You. You have The Pretender these days. Like, you have all those, you know. And back to your cover point, I have to point out, because it's amazing, the Struts covered for them, which also should be on honorable mentions because they were amazing.
They were great.
And their lead singer looks and sounds a lot like Freddie Mercury. They brought him back on stage to do Under Pressure with them. And it was incredible. Like, I absolutely loved it.
They're like for sure my favorite band. I know every Foo Fighters song. So like I'm biased and I had the time of my life at that concert, but I really think even if you just look at their 2000 stuff, like they have more popular music than most of the bands on this list. Mm-hmm. And I think it's worth noting that like Dave Grohl has crafted this image of like the long-haired, like bearded, like lead singer, guitarist of a rock band. Like at least when I think of a rock band, like I just think of the Foo Fighters. They're the closest thing we have, I think, to like the mega bands of the 80s. And I don't know, Mike, you're a little more impartial than we are, so I'd like to get your take on it.
Well, my take is that I asked you probably 2 months ago, like, hey, give me the starter pack for Foo Fighters, because you've been talking about them for so long and I've just never really jumped in. And I've still gotta keep exploring, but they're incredible and they're a rock band. Like, they're a rock band in a way that basically nobody else is. What I was saying earlier about that mix, like that perfect sort of magical mix of like rocking songs and acoustic ballads, and they have it, and there's just such balance to their music that I feel like is sort of what rock and roll is about. So I don't think there's really any argument. They're number one.
And I would say they're not even my top favorite band at all. So in a way, it was like unbiased for me to put it at the top, because I don't listen to them constantly, etc. But they're just incredible.
They were amazing.
Yeah. So who's the band that's missing for you, Kyle?
Right, I need to know that.
So I'm not appalled. This is probably not the right word. I'm like stunned that we have not talked about Weezer yet.
Oh, yeah, Weezer. Yep, they were supposed to be on my honorable mentions. I lost my notes, Mike, just so you know. I explained this to Kyle earlier. I lost my notes.
I know.
I tried to
Holy shit, the show must go on.
Weezer's up. Weezer, I'm comfortable putting on the list.
I think Weezer is like number 3. Like, Weezer, and some of their most well-known stuff, I think the Blue Album was 96. But so, like, you're losing Buddy Holly and Say It Ain't So and My Name is Jonas, but, like, a lot of their most popular music is certainly in the 2000s. Beverly Hills, Hash Pipe, Pork and Beans, Troublemaker. I listened to this album 100 times last year. They just did an album of all covers. And, like, when you can flex and just do an entire album of 80s covers, like, you're very successful. They're, like, kind of, I think, classified as an emo band. Because like they sing a lot about like playing Dungeons and Dragons and making music in their garage, but like I don't know, like these guys are like hugely commercially successul. I think they are distinctly a rock band, and they're very, I don't know, people just know who they are. They're extremely popular.
That's fair. I think that people know who they are, but it's not as popular. They're not as popular as other bands. I think people don't know that they know who they are.
Yeah, that's probably fair.
Yeah, that's legit.
So I'd definitely be comfortable moving them to the list.
Yeah, I think they should be on the list somewhere. If not as high as my bias thinks, that's fine. I've got a couple more. This is a band no one probably listens to except me, and they're a British band called Hardfi. They're really good. I'd recommend going back to them if you haven't heard of them before. Cage the Elephant, I think they probably warrant serious consideration.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's like a legitimate contender.
And because they've just gotten a lot more popular recently.
Yeah. But if you listen to their older stuff, it's like definitely a little edgier and kind of raw and cool. But their more recent stuff is very, like commercially popular. And I think it's really, really good. I like them a lot. I've heard they're very good live. This is just a plug for one of my favorite bands, Social Distortion. Most of their good stuff was really early 2000s. I think... Oh, I would be remiss if I did not mention Wolfmother. That's one of me and Dill's favorite bands.
Wolfmother?
Yeah, I don't think that a lot of people listen to them, but...
I know them.
Yeah.
They're good.
They're fun. Cake. They kind of occupy a weird niche, but I really like them. I think they're a solid honorable mention. In Allegiance's hometown of Moline, there's a Cake cover band called Have Your Cake.
Oh my gosh.
I like it.
I'd like to see them one day. And another one, I think, if we qualify them, I think should warrant serious consideration is the Shins.
I love the Shins. I thought I was being biased by putting them on a list.
They kind of occupy a similar space to Coldplay. They haven't gotten nearly as poppy as Coldplay has, but they're definitely like more on the indie side of rock. So, but if we consider them eligible for this list, they definitely belong on it because they're incredible and they kind of popularized indie rock, as like oxymoronic as that sounds.
Yeah.
So
I would agree with that though. I love the Shins.
Yeah. Anything from you, Mike?
To the surprise of no one, I have one artist I'm gonna plug here. That would be Bruce Springsteen. and I'm actually serious about this. I legitimately am gonna argue for his inclusion on this list because
guys, I'm serious.
No, for real. He has, I just looked at his discography. He's released 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. He's about to release his 8th album of the 2000s, which means he'll have produced like about a third of his collection in the 2000s, and several of those albums are incredible. Wrecking Ball was an absolute just banger from beginning to end. The Rising, though, I would argue The Rising is one of the maybe 5 or 10 most important albums of the 2000s. He released that right after 9/11 and went on live television and sang these songs he had written specifically for the US after 9/11 and like acoustically went up there with just his guitar and his harmonica and sang a song called Empty Sky about the New York City skyline missing the Twin Towers. And just like this is incredible song, incredibly important, beautifully written, perfectly performed. And it was just like a signal that he was back to writing really important songs that people needed to hear. So I think he's had an incredible run in the 2000s and is really one of the only sort of holdovers from that era of music that's still playing in a way that's consistent with the way he used to. I think Paul McCartney is still, touring. People really like him, but I would imagine his live act is a little different than it was back then. Like Bruce is still a person who people who loved music in the 70s and 80s can see the same way that they saw it in the 70s and 80s. And I think that's hugely important. I mean, he plays 4-hour shows still.
That's pretty wild.
You made a good point. I mean, it's hard to argue with some of that.
Yeah. So give me like number 10. I'll take number 10 for him.
That's fine with kicking Cold War Kids off the list.
Okay. Yeah.
We can start with that.
Well, so let's talk about how many spots we're serious about putting on here. I think Weezer belongs.
Yep.
I don't know, Cage the Elephant might be like just missing it based on how strong this list is.
I think Cage the Elephant is like a just missed at 11.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
But like just missed.
I know, I'm trying to think back to some of their older stuff too, like Ain't No Rest for the Wicked is such a great song.
Cigarette Daydreams is just like such a great song.
It is. In
One Ear, Back Against the Wall. They've got such great stuff. So, I don't know, and I guess it depends. Where are we falling on the Shins? Do you listen to the Shins, Mike?
I know the Shins, and I would say that they're kind of...
I think they're too indie for this list.
I think they're too indie. I don't think they would want to be on this list.
Yeah.
I'm looking at all the rest of them. I just think that they're a little too indie. I personally love them, but I think they're too indie.
We'll just have to do an indie podcast and just talk about the Shins for now. Or let's just fuck it. Yeah. Let's just do a Shins podcast. Okay.
Top 10 Shins.
So if we want to put Weezer and Bruce on here, that means we need to get rid of 2. I think Cold War Kids, just because of kind of their, like, I think that's probably like the only band on this list that Mike hadn't heard of, which I think is kind of an indicator of
their... and like you said, they're up and coming more so now.
Yep.
I'm honestly comfortable with moving the White Stripes off because I think they really rack out, but I just don't think the popularity's there.
I think they're important.
So though, I'm not sure I agree. I think this is going to sound like sacrilege, but I actually would be more inclined to take Blink-182 off this list only because I'm just not sure that they fit on this list. I think Blink-182 is incredible, but I think the White Stripes fit on this list more than Blink-182 does. And I think all the other bands on this list kind of fit thematically more than Blink-182 does.
All right. I can see it. They're a little bit more like punk.
I don't know. Kyle, you're pondering.
It's for me, it's between Blink and Arcade Fire. Cause I think Arcade Fire kind of occupies not like the same space as the Shins, but they're like halfway between indie and like popular rock, which is not an indictment of their talent.
I know.
And so like, I'm trying to figure out which of those like fits on this list better. And I'm having a hard time figuring it out because I agree with you too, Mike. Like Blink is kind of like the fact that we talked about them on that list with Dylan is like, that's like a subgenre of popular rock. And they factored high on that list.
Do you think we need to move Cake on the list?
I think Cake has a couple of great songs, and they are a strong... I wasn't kidding. Like, I think they're worthy of, like, a high honorable mention. I don't think, based on the resumes of the other bands on this list, they deserve a top 10 spot. Gina, you're the tiebreaker, and you really love Arcade Fire. I think we should take Blink-182 off.
No, I think we should take Arcade Fire off.
You're being like an anti-Homer.
No, I'm just thinking like comparatively, I think even though both of them are a little off compared to the rest of the list, I think Blink-182 fits better. And I think they're more popular.
All right. Wow.
We trust your judgment.
That's very big.
That is a selfless act.
I love Arcade Fire and they went from 5 to off, but let's take them off.
Wow. Okay.
Truly selfless act by a truly selfless person.
I try.
Let's do this then. I think Foo Fighters and Killers stay at 1 and 2.
Yep.
Right?
Then Weezer at 3.
I like Weezer at 3. You guys seem a little more hesitant.
No, I think Weezer at 3 is a move.
Weezer at 3, let's do it.
Okay, that's correct. Chili Peppers at 4 feels fine to me.
Yep.
After that, we would have Green Day, Muse, Blink-182, Arctic Monkeys.
Yeah, this is where we get a little hazy. I would go... Let me fight. You know what? I'm not actually going to fight for it. I'm going to ask. Can we put Arctic Monkeys at 6? Just do it for me. Do it for the kids.
I'm okay with that.
All right, cool.
And I really think that Arctic Monkeys, popularly and artistically, are a better band than Muse.
Yeah.
I
think they really came into their own, both commercially
does that beat Green Day? Green Day still comes 5?
I think Green Day still has.
If you want it. Oh, all right. Well, I was going to take it.
I think Green Day has a bigger cultural impact than Arctic Monkeys do.
Yeah, I agree. It's just me, Kyle, and a bunch of 16-year-old girls, apparently.
No, I think Blink-182 is more popular than Muse.
Yeah.
Yeah. But given our hesitation about how they fit, I think it's fair to put Muse above them still.
Yeah,
or do you want
I agree.
That would put the White Stripes at 9, where they were.
Mm-hmm.
And Bruce Springsteen would be number 10.
What is the laughter? Why do we keep laughing? He legitimately has had a huge run in the 2000s. I'm gonna look up okay, hold up. Just say stuff. I'm gonna look up artists.
I'm not wait, well, before you do this, while I'm remembering, one more honorable mention that I wanted to plug is an instrumental rock band, Explosions in the Sky. And they do a ton of soundtracks, but they are absolutely incredible. They did the whole Friday Night Lights soundtrack. They did the Lone Survivor soundtrack.
Oh.
Very good, like, background music or working music, whatever. Really good. Obviously, by popularity and just by general rock status, they don't belong on this list, but I needed to give them their own separate plug because they're one of my favorite bands.
I'm really into that. I'm always looking for good instrumental music to listen to at work and stuff. So that's cool.
Recommend.
Thanks, G.
Yep.
We're not laughing at Bruce, Mike. It's just more that it's coming from you.
Okay.
And also, like, I don't know if I could name any of his songs that came after 2000. And I'm not saying that to be like a...
No, and that's entirely reasonable. This legitimately is a situation where if you didn't get off the train, the music that he's been producing in the 2000s is stellar. And that's just from like an actual album point of view, but from a live music point of view, he still sells out, years long tours at stadium after stadium after stadium.
He is still a bona fide rock star.
Yeah.
So is this the final list?
I think what we've done here is we've constructed a top 10 list of the best rock bands from the year 2000 onward.
That's correct.
Gina,
that's kind of what it feels like.
You did such an incredible job. This is like probably the longest honorable mention list we've ever had, and it's clear that you put a lot of thought into this, even though you left Weezer off your list.
That's fair.
It's super fine. Would you care to recite our final list for the good listeners?
Do I go from 10 to 1?
Yeah, that's the way we usually do it.
Number 10, Bruce Springsteen. Number 9, The White Stripes. Number 8, Blink-182. Number 7, Muse. Number 6, Arctic Monkeys. Number 5, Green Day. Number 4, Red Hot Chili Peppers. Number 3, Weezer. How could I forget? Number 2, The Killers. And number 1, Foo Fighters.
Wow.
What a epic guest appearance. This was like Hot Fuss levels of debut work.
Excellent reference.
Really excited for Gina's follow-up album on this podcast. I'm glad that we finally got this done. We've been talking about it for a long time. We really do appreciate your fandom. It means a lot that you advocate for it so much. So
I believe in you guys.
Thanks, G. I would like to close the podcast, in addition to thanking G, by thanking our dear friend Kevin MacLeod for whipping up the stankiest beats that we ever did here and our not top 3 music and our intro music. And I'll go ahead and thank Aaron Sant for putting together our artwork because it's dope AF. If you want to see more of her stuff, you can see it at Sant Design on Instagram.
I'm not going to thank the dope-ass work of Aaron Sant, but suffice to say, it is dope-ass.
Yep.
I will specifically thank the dope-ass work of our social media coordinator, Caroline Labranti. Check her stuff out, I don't know, somewhere. Google her, I don't know. I want to thank her for doing her great work on our very mediocre Twitter, our pretty damn good Instagram and Facebook situations. All that shiz is top 10 KM, TEN. And you can check us out on the old emails, top10km@gmail.com. Send us your thoughts, positive, negative, stuff we need to be doing, ways you can get on the podcast. We would love that. And while you are listening to the podcast on some app, there are a bunch of apps you can listen on, like the Apple Podcast app, Stitcher, Spotify, Podbean, pretty much wherever podcasts are sold. Though I don't think they're sold.
No.
Nah, man.
Well, that was so much damn fun. Final thank you to Gina. We really appreciate you coming on.
Thank you guys for having me. It was a blast.
Thank you.
See you later, Amigo.
All right. See
sleep.
you, friends. Bye, Kyle, and bye, new friend Gina.
Bye.
On this week's episode of Curious George, we are joined by the lady in the yellow hat.
Oh, it's 2019.
Yep, damn right it is.